The Chicago Bulls are now in one of the most powerful positions that they've been in a long time. In a deep 2026 draft, the Chicago Bulls now have the number 9 and the number 15th pick before heading into the draft lottery, which that number 9 pick could even get better, plus $65 million in cap space, $20 million in trade exceptions. We're going to talk about how the Bulls can use their spending power in creative ways this offseason, as well as talking about the players that the Bulls could target now with the 15th overall pick. We're going to talk about all that plus more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. So last night with the Portland Trail Blazers getting a win, 114-110 over the Phoenix Suns in the opening play-in game, the Portland Trail Blazers now move into the playoffs, and the Chicago Bulls now get their their first round pick. People will remember this trade goes all the way back to the Lauri Markkanen trade that sent Lauri Markkanen to the Portland Trail Blazers. The Bulls got a lottery protected first round pick that was protected all the way till 2028, which basically locked in the Portland Trail Blazers first round picks. They could not trade any first round picks until that pick conveyed to the Chicago Bulls. They now gain more flexibility. The Bulls gain an additional first-round pick in this deep draft. We'll talk more on that in a second, but the Bulls are completely now loaded with assets. 4 picks in this draft coming up. Now, do I expect them to take all 4? We'll see. They may trade out of that second-round pick. I do expect them to keep both first-round picks, right? You add that into their $65 million in cap space and the $20 million in trade exceptions. The Bulls have complete control and flexibility to move this offseason. Now, the thing that we're still missing is who's going to be the person making those decisions and those calls on the draft picks, on the free agency, all that type of stuff. But on today's episode, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about how the Bulls can weaponize their cap space and use that to take on bad contracts, stacking draft picks, those type of things. We're going to take a little look at that. But first, I want to start off with this 15th overall pick. So this is a lottery, basically a lottery pick. The first pick outside the lottery. And then when you add in the depth in this draft, where people are talking about you can get players that have all-star potential all the way down to picks 2022, this gives tremendous draft power and control for the Chicago Bulls in doing that. This is a rebuild accelerator. That's what that is, right? So if the Bulls, regardless if we get lottery luck or not with the number 9 overall pick, if we do move into the top 4, even having a pick, even if it stays at number 9, and we have the number 15 pick, hell, even if the Chicago Bulls move down to 10 or 11 or something like that with teams passing them up in the lottery, this is still tremendous spending power in this draft, whether the Bulls decide to keep both picks individual. If, let's say, the number 9 pick, let's say they get leapfrogged in the lottery and it moves down to number 10 or 11 or something like that, they could try to move up to get a guy that they have marked, whatever they end up doing. But I want for today's conversation, I want to focus on us getting that 15th overall pick and the prospects that we could draft if we stay at that 15th overall pick. And in my mindset, and I want to lay this out, we'll go best available at pick number 9, which in spot that we are is probably going to be a guard. I just have started to come around to it's probably going to be Braden Burries or somebody like that. It's probably going to be a guard. We'll continue talking about that as the offseason goes on. But that now allows the Chicago Bulls to go and get one of these bigs in this draft. And so what I'm going to focus on right now with the 15th overall pick is I'm going to focus mainly on the bigs that the Chicago Bulls can go out and get. Now, those that have watched my draft coverage knows by the end of this, we're going to talk about every single possibility that the Bulls can do at number 15th pick. But for right now, I do want to stick on that. So the Chicago Bulls have, of course, 4 picks in this draft. They have their own number 9 pick, which has a 20.3% chance of moving into the top 4 and a 4.5% chance to move into to get the number 1 pick. We have the 15th overall pick. It sits just outside the lottery, so that's what it comes down to with that one. And then you also have the second round picks that we have, which is number 38 and number 52, I believe, pick when it comes down to that one. So the fact that the Bulls have 2 picks in the top 16, that's really what we're focused on. Oh, it's the 38th overall pick and the 56th overall pick is what we have. So who can we pick with the 15th overall pick? I want to go over a number of prospects here that a lot of you guys have brought up. The first one I want to talk about is Kareem Lopez. You look at this guy, a long, athletic forward, center type feel, whatever you want to do, from Mexico when it comes down to it. He brings so much physical tools that the Bulls could absolutely use. He has an NBA-ready frame and size right away, I think, already. He has smooth movements at time also. He also knows how to operate within the offensive flow of the team, right? Lopez, when it comes down to it, has very solid offensive skills. His ability to attack the basket. He also can operate as a floor spacer to a certain degree. He has a decent handle for his size as well. He knows how to read the basketball floor, so he's also a solid passer also. When you look at him defensively, though, that's where it comes to be. He plays with so much awareness on that defensive side of the ball that I think his ability to use his size and his length has been great. He's athletic. He's a modern-day thing when it comes down to it. Now, the question comes down, can he actually play center? And that's the thing that people are going to question. He's 6'8", 220 pounds, so that's more of a power forward build, so you'd be moving Modest Buzelis to the 3. He doesn't really get that. He does have – he's really well coordinated, has tons of athleticism. His off-ball cutting is really good as well. He finishes strong around the basket, and I love how he can guard multiple positions on the defensive side of the ball. But some of the negatives and concerns for him. He's not a great perimeter shooter, so he's going to have to deliver to do that a little bit more consistently. At sometimes when it comes down to, his movement sometimes can be a little bit stiff, even though he has that athleticism, and that's something that I think we have to look at as well. And I think you're still going to have to define his long-term position, and I think that's the kind of the concerns with him. But love the kid. A lot of you guys have brought him up over the last couple of weeks, and now that we know that we have the 15th pick, definitely look more into him. The other guy, Patrick Ngangba. This is the center out of Duke, 6'11", 250 pounds. This guy is sophomore at Duke when it comes down to it. He impacts the game with his strength. He has tons of strength. When it comes down to it, he's just strong. He's going to have to work on some of the polished parts of the game, right? His post game is decent. He has really solid footwork when it comes down to it. He's patient. I think he has, a nice bevy of post moves. He has a really good hook shot, those type of things. And the way that he does play with strength at being this young really brings a lot of kind of positivities when it comes down to him. A draft analyst said this: Ngangba's size, presence, and skill level stand out, and he clearly contributes to winning. While I have concerns about his mobility and versatility, he remains a priority to evaluate moving forward. So I think those are the things that you have. He has a really good feel passing-wise as well, and he's going to be able to rebound and get that paint really well. What are some of the concerns for him? He's not the most mobile big man. He does have tremendous strength, but he's not really an athlete, if that makes sense. He's not going to space the floor at all, not at this part of his game. And while he is a really active defender, he's not going to be a guy that can switch on the guards or guard in space at all, right? And then you have the injury concern, the foot injury concern specifically. And typically when you run into big men with that type of concerns with lower bodies this early on, it doesn't typically get better. I want to be clear on that. It does not typically get better. So the questions that you have for him, the biggest questions that you have for him is, can he actually become a switchable defender? I don't necessarily project that for him, but if that doesn't, can he become a good enough shot blocker to where he's able to patrol the paint and doesn't need to be a switchable big, right? Like that's the thing that you have to look at. So because his quickness is kind of below average and he's not a great athlete, so he doesn't have tremendous verticality, you're really looking at his natural size and how much of that is going to hold back his defense. That's the question that you have to ask with Patrick Ngangba. But I love the kid's motor. The things I like about him, especially at number 15, but there are other players that we can definitely look at. One of those guys being Jaden Quinton. Now, this is a guy that has not had a lot of experience, right? He's 6'10", 255 pounds. It's a guy that when you look at it, he was one of the youngest players overall in college basketball last season and even found a way to stand out there. 6'10", a 7'3" wingspan. The physicals and the measurables all very much stand out about him. One of the quotes from a draft expert said this: Jaden Quinton has rare physical tools for a young big, and his defensive talent is already impressive. I'm looking forward to seeing him back healthy. So that's what you come down to. When you look at it, his defensive playmaking is damn near elite. He is an elite rim protector. His timing, his ability to use his length, his instincts on shot blocks are all next level already right away. I would not be surprised if he ends up being a guy that gets close to 2 blocks per game over the course of his NBA career. I would not be surprised with that. He's also a really good rebounding big, which you love about that as well. And then, of course, the measurables are all favorable for him. The size, the length, What he does with the little bit of mobility that he does have, all that type of stuff is really there. He's already an effective lob threat and rim runner as well. When you talk about the prototypical big that you want with a point guard like Josh Giddey, he fits that perfectly. Rim runner, rebounder, shot blocker, lob threat. He brings all of that. And I think he's extremely young in this draft class as well. You got to keep in mind, he was born in 2007. So he's still an extremely young player, even with, being, a sophomore in college right now. He's still extremely young. But what are some of the concerns about him? Consistency. He's just not a very consistent player yet. Now, the youth may explain that, but he's not a very consistent player yet. Offensive skill. He doesn't have a lot of advanced offense. So you're really looking at him feasting off his guards, doing a lot of the creation for him, which is good. If he can work on that if that footwork, all that type of stuff, I would get him working with a post move specialist right away if that's there. And his touch on his shots isn't reliable yet, right? His free throw shooting is a question mark. His perimeter shooting comes and goes. There's some times where you have some flashes there. And then also his discipline on the defensive side of the ball. While he uses his timing, his intelligence, all that stuff really well, sometimes he can gamble. And that causes problems, especially when, you need that big man in the paint. So that's the concerns with Quentin Sims. I still love him. If the Bulls were to draft him at number 15, I think he presents one of the best upside picks. He has maybe a top 10 level skill set, but with the injuries and consistency and stuff like that, that's why you're going to see him potentially be there at number 15. We'll see with the draft combine. I do think that he can be a draft combine riser as well, where he really rises up in that draft combine, but we shall see. But when it comes down to it, gifted, physical tools are there. Rebounding, I think he's strong post presence, and the upside there, the trajectory is there, is excellent for him, and he has the huge ability to be a two-way presence in the NBA. The last player that we're going to talk about today is Nic Jr. This is the center/forward combo out of Houston, 6'11", 240 pounds. You look at this guy, versatility out the wazoo. Has the NBA-ready frame, the NBA-ready body already. His combination of size, coordination, mobility, it separates him, and I'm honestly surprised he's not somebody who's projected to go higher. Still young. He was also born in 2007 as well, right? And so I think that he has shown glimpses of being more than a traditional big man, and that's what it comes down to. His length defensively and his agility allows him to protect the rim, rebound, and be a lob threat right away. He also is a really good screen setter, which I think for this team is going to be really important. And a draft expert in regards to him said this: Nic's size, mobility, and skill set give him significant upside, and his style of play as a big man makes him an intriguing long-term NBA prospect. The physical tools, the athleticism, the potential offensively, I think that he has the potential to be a dynamic finisher around the rim while also being a lob threat, which, again, we need. His ball handling is really solid as well for his size, and I love that about him, and I would not be mad if the Chicago Bulls draft him at all. Some of the concerns about him is consistency. There's that part of it. Physically, he has the frame to add muscle, but, and he's going to need to do that because he's going to have to establish himself inside more, but he's going to have to do that kind of right away. And he's a foul baiter. Like, he fouls a lot right now, right? But that's typically what you see from young big men is they foul a lot early, and they end up working that out of their game. So Nic Jr., I think he's going to be able to work that out. But let me know what you guys think on that one. I think there's multiple talented big men that the Chicago Bulls can draft. They're at number 15. And there's even some guys that I didn't even get into mentioning, because you got guys like Thomas Hall, right? That's another guy. Haize Steinbeck, who, is projected to be a lottery pick, but if somebody leaves him, he can maybe fall there. The Bulls can try to move up. Cole Pete is another guy that I haven't talked about, but I'll get into those guys. Andy Mara. So I have not overlooked that. We just got a lot to get into this episode, so I had to stick to some of my favorite prospects, but I will get into those other guys as we get to covering the draft, right? But with that said, I talked about us also covering free agency, right? And weaponizing cap space. And I want to talk about the different options for the Chicago Bulls and what they can do with their cap space. So for those that don't know, the Chicago Bulls have $65 million in cap space, $115 million beneath the first tax apron. So they have a number of things that they can do. They also have a $20 million trade exception that they can also use. So how can they use that? I want to talk about the first way the Chicago Bulls can use their cap space. The first way is taking on bad contracts and stack draft picks, right? Why would the Bulls do that? Well, the Bulls could do that because they realize that in anything, or let's say they strike out this offseason, right? And any moves that they can make, maybe they don't feel like it puts them in the spot that they want to be. Again, Michael Ryan stuff. They want to win, but they want to do so if they can do it sustainably, right? And even in a draft where you got 4 draft picks in a deep draft in 2026, it's never a bad thing to stack draft assets, because you don't always have to use those to draft somebody, you can use those to make trades. So the Bulls, with their $65 million in cap space and their $20 million trade exception, could be a third team in a lot of trades. Look at teams like the Warriors, the Heat, the Raptors, the Lakers, the Nuggets. All these teams are looking to make moves this offseason, reportedly, that could need them to dump off salary to another team. For example, the Heat, the Warriors, the Raptors are all going to go star hunting, right? Those all could be guys that are interested in Giannis Antetokounmpo. You look at the Warriors, they have Jimmy Butler's contract. The Bucks may not want to take that back. The Heat, you may have to facilitate there, right? As far as what they need. The Raptors, Jakob Poeltl's contract, right? So you have that part of it as well. Then you look at the Nuggets, right? The Nuggets, they have Cam Johnson's contract, which they may try to send off to another team so that they can re-sign Peyton Watson in restricted free agency. The Bulls can absorb all of Cam Johnson's salary outright. Now, of course, those teams are all going to be trying to win, so their draft picks may not be great, but that's where it gets creative. The Bulls can to say, well, listen, we'll take on Cam Johnson. We'll take on Jimmy Butler's contract, but we want the furthest out draft pick that you have. So that may be 2031, 2032, right? And I know Bulls fans are going to say, do we really want to wait that long? Look how long we just waited for the Portland pick, right? So if it gives you an opportunity, keep in mind, also because Cam Johnson, Jimmy Butler, those guys only have 1-year contracts, all you're doing is pushing your cap space off to another year. So if you strike out this year, you then could say, hey, we're going to have another offseason of cap space next season. And that's what you can do in that one. It allows the Chicago Bulls to stack draft assets without taking on long-term bad money. That's the key there. Not taking on long-term bad money, and then stack draft assets in the future. And then you could be one of these teams. A lot of people talk about, well, why can't we replicate what OKC did? That's how you can do stuff like that. If you get future picks, and then that team that you traded the future pick with, let's say that they are bad by 2032, 2033, then you're benefiting from a move that you made 6 years earlier, right? So that's just a forward thinking that you can do with it. You can also do some more immediate stuff in the upcoming drafts if you want to, but that is the first way that the Bulls can use their cap space. Taking on bad contracts to stack draft assets. Also, you can also offer up trades to help other teams. They're not necessarily taking bad contracts, but to provide some cap flexibility. Two things that you can do with that one. For example, Nic Claxton. Let's say Nic Claxton, the Brooklyn Nets don't want to pay, they want to ease up their tax bill, right? Or their salary. You can take on Nic Claxton. Isaiah Hartenstein with the OKC Thunder. The Thunder very well could waive Isaiah Hartenstein, but let's say the Bulls they want to get ahead of that and they don't want to have to bid in free agency. They can call up the OKC Thunder and say, hey, listen, if you were planning on opting out of Isaiah Hartenstein's contract, we can take him on. We can absorb him into our cap space. It creates another trade exception for you, and we can send a heavily protected future first-round pick. You can do those type of things. So you can still take on money that other teams don't, but it's not bad money, and you're not stacking draft assets in that case, but you're getting a player in that then you don't have to negotiate in free agency. Imagine if the Chicago Bulls in the draft or whatever trade for Isaiah Hartenstein. Let's say they trade both their second-round picks for Isaiah Hartenstein because they have the number 9, they have the number 15, they feel confident about that. They trade the a few second-round picks for Isaiah Hartenstein. They absorb that money into the salary. That's helping your team because now you're going into free agency and you don't have to worry about outbidding for Walker Kessler or questioning if you can get Mark Williams. You're just getting Isaiah Hartenstein. You then have the right to then extend him if you want to on that contract. So that's another way that the Chicago Bulls can use that cap space, is taking on players that other teams maybe we're going to dump off anyway. So that's what you can look at with that one. And then, of course, you have the traditional way. Signing free agents, signing unrestricted free agents. $65 million is a lot of spending power out in free agency. The problem is there are not really a lot of big-name free agents out there, right? This is just not one of those offseasons where it's a plethora of big-name free agents that are worthy of huge deals. So because there's not an unrestricted free agents, it means the Bulls would have to pivot towards the restricted free agent market, which if they do that, of course, that leaves you with the opportunity to have your cap space kind of tied up, right? Now, what I'll say with this is because there's not a lot of huge unrestricted free agents the Bulls are likely to target, maybe it's not a bad thing that your cap space gets tied up because you're willing to wait for it if it means you're going after a Peyton Watson or Tari Eason or Walker Kessler or Mark Williams, somebody like that, right? There a Ben Mathurin, right? There are a number of players that the Bulls can try to go after. Of course, those teams have matching rights, which is why restricted free agency is always a gamble. But if you're willing and able to pay enough, you can try to put a lot of pressure on those teams to see if they really want to match that contract. And that's what the Bulls can also do in free agencies, play the chess match in free agency. It would have to mean that whoever's running the show has a vision of who they want, and they kind of have some intel on who teams are willing to match and what for. And if that works out, then it works out for the Chicago Bulls, and we'll see what's going to happen there. So overall, to recap, there's basically 3 ways the Bulls can use their cap space. They can take on bad contracts and be a third team in trades and thus stack draft assets. They can also take on contracts from other teams that players were going to dump off that actually can help this team, i.e. Isaiah Hartenstein, or you can do it the more traditional way, go after free agents, go after restricted free agents, and we'll see what's going to happen with that one. But let me know which way you would like to see the Bulls continue to build this team out and how you would like to see them use their cap space in the summer of 2026. Last topic before we get up out of here, there have now been 2 names that have emerged as front runners for the Chicago Bulls open exec position. And the 2 guys, one guy that I've already said I want to see the guy to be the guy to take the job, and another guy that apparently has been rising up. So we're going to talk about that guy first. Austin Brown. He's an agent with CAA, right? So if you're unfamiliar with him, you're not going to be the only one that's done that. He's not a current NBA executive at all. He's an agent, right? And he's his client list includes Cooper Flagg, Donovan Mitchell, Jaren Jackson Jr., Trae Young. But there is some belief around that, that he could be willing to go into NBA front office. This kind of initially started by Dan Bernstein, who said this. CAA's Austin Brown, one of the most prominent NBA agents, is based in Chicago and has had several clients play for Donovan over the years. He has been cited as a potential candidate. Would the Bulls be prepared to make a significant offer to pry him away from the agent side of the business? So this is an interesting part. It would be that the Bulls identified somebody that they feel has the vision, has the player connections, right? That's really good. I think when you look at a former agent becoming an NBA exec, the thing that benefits from that is that they have relationships with players, which means when it comes time to recruiting for free agents or it comes time to negotiating deals, they're used to being on the other side of that. So it could give you a leg up, which I wouldn't hate for the Chicago Bulls at all. Any advantage for the Chicago Bulls, I wouldn't hate. He's reportedly one of the most connected agents around the NBA. And so, that's what it's worth. So I wouldn't really mind at it, but would this be the right move for the Bulls to get a former agent to be their lead exec? Could be, right? Then the other guy is Matt Lloyd, the current Minnesota Timberwolves GM. This is a guy that worked up as an unpaid intern all the way up. He was a draft scout here, so he helped draft and scout guys that, that we've had, like Jimmy Butler, the Derrick Roses, those guys, and that's really good. He was in that organization from, I believe, 94 all the way up into 2011, working himself up, eventually going over to the Minnesota Timberwolves. But we know that the Reinsdorfs love guys that are in the family, guys that they have been familiar with before. And because Matt Lloyd and I also worked up, one thing I've always said with the Bulls is we don't have like the things like Miami, right? You look at Eric Spoelstra, who worked himself up from the video room all the way up to being the head coach and maybe the team's next president whenever Pat Riley steps down. You have a guy like Matt Lloyd who basically worked himself up as an unpaid intern, eventually left the franchise, but could come back and to lead it. It is what it is. He began his career working here, and so now, learning under Tim Connelly and stuff like that, could that be something? Now, Scotto said this. Minnesota Timberwolves general manager Matt Lloyd, who began his career working for the Bulls, is a rising executive who's been on the radar of several teams over the years. One factor to consider is whether the Bulls would want to hire another one of Tim Connelly's right-hand executives after hiring Karnisovas, who worked for Connelly in Denver, which is a really good point. I think the difference for Matt Lloyd, though, is that the Reinsdorfs have some familiarity with him. And so it seems like that, right? And we'll see. People are saying that it's basically a guarantee that he's at least going to get an interview here. Let's see if he ends up taking the role. And since he's the GM there, it'll have to be the president of basketball operations role. So just a little update for that. We still got to make it through the Billy Donovan decision, I think, before we really hear what's going to happen with the exec or the front office or anything like that. But it just goes to show again, this offseason will define everything for this team. The rebuild speed, the speed of and the success of the rebuild directly comes down to what they do with these picks. And we're going to see flexibility, aggression, ownership pressure, whatever happens, we'll see what's going to happen with this team. But this is a big offseason for the Chicago Bulls, and let's see if they can make it happen. But that's going to do it for today's episode, man. I want to appreciate and thank you guys for all tuning in to this episode of Chicago Bulls Central, man. I want to hear your thoughts down below on everything. How would you like to see the Chicago Bulls use their cap space? How would you like to see them, who would you like to see them go after with the 14th overall pick? Or would you like to see them package whatever it is? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode and an upload. You can follow us at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns,
bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. That is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.